Alright guys, it's me again. Today we're going to actually refute a small creator over misconceptions about Skibidi Toilet. Because look at what he said about our friendly series, Skibidi Toilet. So bring your snacks, juice, drinks, whatever, because this is going to be a fun one. Without further ado, let's get started and watch.
Unfortunately, we only hire from Riz Academy. And you not only rizzed Livy Dunn's level 5 Gyat, you didn't even edge to Kaisenat.
The kids might not be alright. The content that many young people now watch is bizarre, intense, chaotic, unnerving, and unsettling. As I'm sure you're already aware, it's what's called brain rot and has caused immense concern among parents and much of the wider population, and has even had a fair amount of media coverage. There's a fear among many that young minds are literally being rotted by inane trash, even if the science isn't there to prove it yet, the same way it is for social media more broadly. The content is often deliberately indecipherable to older people, partly through the extensive use of slang, but more importantly, through the extensive use of references. Layers upon layers of them, in fact, until the end product has no relation to reality, what a certain French 20th century philosopher might even call a simulation. But what does this mean, and how did we get here? Let's get into it.
Yeah, we can agree on this partially. Okay, pause. Do you see this part where he put this type of content in his video? Oh, guess what? It can be countered. Ta-da, which is this. Yeah, as we can see here, this image clearly shows off-brand content farms that are completely irrelevant to the official Skibidi Toilet series. So why would he put that there? Is he choosing to blame the official series for content farms that are not even related to the series in the first place? Who knows? But we can tell that based on the first few minutes, this is not looking good. Using independent creators' off-brand content as an example to judge the official series, which is clearly a guilt by association scenario I mentioned in one of my videos.
A lot, and you probably already have an idea of what it is. So I want to be clear on what I think brain rot content is, and more importantly, what I think it isn't. Wiktionary has a couple of definitions that both apply. Firstly, the degradation of mental faculties, intelligence, common sense, or moral character, and two, more relevant here, is slang, derogatory, media deemed to hold little artistic value and or negatively impact those who consume it. Random, chaotic content on TikTok is often considered brain rot. Think strange, bizarre edits crammed with references, or maybe split-screen ASMR or Subway Surfers style videos designed to retain the attention of easily distracted audiences while watching content that's still often less than a minute long, or AI-generated nonsensical junk pumped out for the lowest common denominator, or simply to attract people watching out of pure morbid fascination. Content that might have you wondering, who's actually watching this?
This is where I respond to his claim that Skibidi Toilet is brain rot. The definition of brain rot is the degradation of mental faculties, intelligence, common sense, or moral character, or content deemed to hold little artistic value and or negatively impact those who consume it. Alright, let's debunk this step by step. Firstly, the second part of the definition is too subjective and ambiguous. The word artistic value is purely based on subjective taste, not something objective. Because if it's based on subjective taste, there is no clear definition of what could be considered more artistic or less artistic. For example, a banana taped on a wall was sold for millions of dollars and considered art. Yet I and millions others consider it to have little artistic value. However, many people still believe that is worth millions because of its artistic value. Does that mean it fits into the brain rot category? No, not at all. Also, any media or series can negatively impact those around us. It doesn't necessarily confine itself to brain rot content. For example, many other games or videos such as Call of Duty, Roblox, and more could impact people negatively by making them more rude or toxic, encouraging excessive gaming, etc. So, just because media has little artistic value or negatively impacts those who consume it, doesn't necessarily mean that content is brain rot, since this could apply to thousands of other media that people don't consider brain rot or not even brain rot in the first place. Now, let's define this simpler for the audience. First, degradation is becoming worse or lower in quality. Second, mental faculties is thinking abilities, memory, reasoning, understanding. Third, intelligence is ability to learn and solve problems. Fourth, common sense is practical judgment about what's reasonable. Fifth, moral character is sense of right and wrong, values, behavior toward others. Okay, this is hilarious because this Wiktionary definition is full of nonsense. I feel sorry for using this definition. Did this guy even checked on what was he quoting? You can't just quote some things and leave some parts of it ignored. That's not how it works. Like, what do you mean brain rot reduces a person's morality? Oh, so if I watch Skibidi Toilet for 3 months, the next few years I'll turn into a chaos space marine and lose my humanity. Like, I'm sorry, what? How could I possibly lose my moral character by watching something brain rot? Again, this is not scientifically proven. Just because you watch brain rot doesn't mean it leads to a degradation of your moral character. This entirely depends on the person watching it, and more research would be needed to prove that claim. And intelligence does not depend on the content itself. It depends on one's personality and traits. People can watch tons of so-called brain rot content and still maintain their intelligence and common sense. So brain rot wouldn't necessarily affect these types of abilities that are listed here, and clearly depends on a person. Brain rot content is basically the same as regular content, just more on the cringe or low effort side. You watch it today while scrolling on Instagram, and you forget it tomorrow, unless you watch it every day. But even that depends on the person and cannot be generalized into this definition. Again, this is not scientifically proven. Therefore, these definitions of brain rot are unreliable and untrustworthy.
Which is far from specific to the young people of today.
Like tubular. Well, it's like a totally great day. It's like totally awesome.
Gag me with a spoon.
Or memes, which have been around for some time and are more often than not harmless. So when I talk about brain rot content, my definition might be narrower than some other uses of the word, but this isn't me taking a super strong, passionate stance on brain rot because, well, that would be silly. Skibidi Toilet is probably one of the most cited examples of brain rot content. For many, Skibidi Toilet typifies brain rot because it's bizarre and seemingly inane, and it's massively successful too.
There we go again. Skibidi Toilet being cited as one of the main examples of brain rot. By his definition, as long as something is bizarre, seemingly aimless, and largely successful, it is brain rot? Are you serious? MrBeast's videos are bizarre, seemingly aimless, and extremely successful. Does that mean MrBeast is brain rot too? That's completely illogical and false.
It has 24 seasons and 76 episodes, although these episodes have gotten significantly longer over time. By November 2023, YouTube videos associated with it had accumulated over 65 billion views, and as of the time of making this video, its Georgian creator, Dafuqboom, had 43.1 million subscribers on YouTube. There's even talk of a Skibidi Toilet film, which might be directed by none other than Michael Bay. If you don't already know, Skibidi Toilet is a web series that depicts a war between singing human-headed toilets and their enemies, humanoids with cameras, speakers, and TVs for heads. Initially,
Oh, wow. This guy knew about future episodes up to 76, and still chose to show the beginning episodes that were clearly jokes. He didn't present the newer episodes, but instead showed the early ones. That's honestly shocking, because the newer episodes clearly tell a different story, and they represent what the series is now, not the early episodes that were just a starting point. Moving on.
simple, chaotic skits, this has gradually evolved over time to develop an extensive and elaborate lore, although there's no dialogue, which gives it an appeal that transcends language. Most of the episodes is just explosions and huge battles, although it does get more dark and ominous as the seasons progress. Skibidi Toilet typifies brain rot partly because of its extensive use of references, often via the recycling of content, many of which its young audience are unlikely to even know the origins of. In fact, there's a whole page on the Skibidi Toilet wiki, of course it has its own wiki, dedicated to the references in Skibidi Toilet. Perhaps most obviously, its theme song is an unlicensed mashup of Give It To Me by Timbaland and Dom Dom Yes Yes by Bulgarian artist Bisa King. I'm still getting to grips with YouTube's copyright system, so I'll play it safe and won't include a clip of it, but obviously you can just look it up. There's also the regular use of Tears for Fears' Everybody Wants to Rule the World, which again is unauthorized. The series is made using Source Filmmaker, free software from video game developers Valve, and as a result, it contains extensive recycling of Valve's properties. The leader of the Skibidi toilets, G-Man, is copied from Half-Life 2, and assets from it in Counter-Strike, another Valve property, are used extensively. The cameraman, one of the character types, does a dance taken from Fortnite. There's even cameos from popular YouTubers and streamers such as Penguin Zero, also known as Moist Critical. Season 6 even contains a casual reference to 9/11, which took place over a decade before much of its audience was born. I'm not sure most viewers even noticed the reference on the video I watched, based off the lack of acknowledgement in the comments. Skibidi Toilet is just a relevant example, but extensive use of references to other media, often internet-based, is a hallmark of this type of brainrot content. The often low-effort recycling of assets in a repetitive context. Skibidi Toilet's alienation of older audiences through pure weirdness is what makes it so appealing to its target audience.
The series gradually evolved over time and developed extensive and elaborate lore, yet he still calls it brain rot. He literally admitted that Skibidi Toilet has lore, and evolved into something more complex, and he even showed episode 67, which already refutes the claim that it's brain rot. Brain rot content typically has no lore, doesn't evolve, and has no plot, unlike Skibidi Toilet. Yet, he still calls it brain rot in the video and description. Congratulations, you contradicted yourself without realizing it. And what do you mean it has no dialogue? I'm going to show you an example. You're just straight up wrong.
Is coming. That's why certain things have to remain secret. There is no evidence left, except one thing.
So, no dialogue. Yeah, that claim is debunked. And most episodes are explosions and huge battles. This guy clearly didn't watch or know anything about the Bunker arc and later episodes. The Bunker arc was one of the longest arcs in the franchise and was mostly about lore and exploration about the Alpha Hills and what actually happened during the first arrival of G-Toilet on Earth, with minimal battles. So no, most episodes are not just explosions and battles. Even future episodes and secret scenes prove otherwise, with major lore drops and background stories. I honestly don't know where he got this information from. Even if the series contain minor brain rot or references to other characters, they only affect a tiny portion of the series, like 0.01%, and can be negligible, which is fine to ignore. Those parts are mostly jokes or appeals to modern Gen Z or Gen Alpha humor. If this were 2015, Dafuqboom probably wouldn't have done that. And again, he basically conceded he was wrong. If there's a wiki explaining the entire lore, references, content, and plot, then how could you call it brain rot? The plot is literally documented, yet you still call it brain rot? Now, the media he showed is completely dishonest and ignorant. None of it represents the actual Skibidi Toilet series. For example, let's compare Rue One's art to his evidence. Why does Rue One's art show something different? Because Rue One actually did research and didn't judge the series based on surface level content. Otherwise, artwork like that would be completely unnecessary for something supposedly brain rot. The evidence this guy used isn't even from the actual series itself, and the rest is just him talking about irrelevant stuff. So I'm going to cut this short.